Hello, dear listeners. This is the final episode in our 2025 season, although it's coming out in 2026. We decided to round out our male-centric season by reading Joan Didion's Play It As It Lays. This was the first time for both of us reading Didion, and we had a great conversation talking about how she kind of functions as a signifier for cool detachment. Think Lana Del Rey. We also talked about how Didion's prose has this wonderful and very effective remove that speaks to this great emotional depth that's often under the surface of this very naturalistic dialogue. We also talk about the ways Play It As It Lays feels particularly cinematic. We also just want to thank you for listening to the season. Your comments and your streams really mean a lot to us, and we hope you'll tune in for the spring semester season. We're tentatively calling it The Infinite Library Goes Woke, where we don't read a single white male author. As always, don't forget to give us a follow on Blue Sky, YouTube, and Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and we hope you enjoy the conversation. We're rolling.
Craps?
Oh yeah, we're playing the game, John.
Insert dice rattling sound effect here. I don't know how to play craps.
Well, you could say snake eyes, but I think that's
the only roll I know, and that one's bad.
Yeah, that one's bad. So
do you just want the biggest number? Like you just want to roll 12?
I think you just want to roll 12 for craps, right?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying.
I don't know either.
So there's no strategy, I guess.
I remember my proudest moment in Monopoly was I was drunk and I didn't buy a Monopoly, and all I was doing was just rolling around the board, rolling doubles. And every time I would roll doubles, I'd yell, "Snake eyes!" And I managed to make it pretty far into the game without a Monopoly, and then my luck ran out and I had to pay $1,000 because I landed on a boardwalk or something. So
I don't remember the last time I even played Monopoly.
It's not a very good game. So
I remember getting through one game of it when I was a child and being like, that took way too long and wasn't very fun, and kind of never playing again.
Yeah, because at some point you're just waiting for somebody to land on something. That's the gameplay element. So.
Yeah, when you think about it, kind of like a problem with a lot of didactic left-wing art, huh? Kind of has that Monopoly problem where at a certain point it just stops being entertaining or fun.
Yeah, you're just waiting for the point. Yeah.
Well, we're not here to talk about Monopoly.
We're here to talk about Joan Didion.
Yes, in fact, we are. Ben, what's your relationship with Joan Didion?
Well, first we should probably introduce... This is the Infinite Library Podcast. I'm your host, Ben.
I'm your host, John.
And yeah, we're talking about Play It As It Lays by Joan Didion, which was published in 1970?
1970, yes, sir.
And so my relation with Joan Didion is unfortunately non-existent. This is the first Joan Didion book I read. In fact, I also was a little bit confused about Didion's whole thing just because of my ignorance, and I had to do a little background research. I knew she had written a bunch of essays about the hippies and about how maybe the hippies weren't all that great, was my impression. But I have a virtually non-existent relationship with Joan Didion. This is my first Didion book. I think I'm going to have to check out some of her essays. But as we've kind of discussed before the recording, John, I feel like she has a reputation as being something cool people read, which I think is interesting. And, I'm always interested in reading things of all people of all different types read. And so I enjoyed this as a cool person read.
Yeah, I will also be pretty frank. I do not have an extensive relationship with Didion either. I think I probably had read a little more than you when we started. I've mostly read her essays, not even a whole collection of them, just here and there. I've read some of her essays on architecture in particular. But yeah, she's someone who I feel like I mostly have known by reputation. And I mean, she's been on my list of people to get to for quite a long time, which is why I honestly suggested this episode. I've had like a copy of the White Album sitting on my bedside table with like the rest of my to be read stack for quite some time, and I just have not quite gotten to it yet. She's someone I like as a writer, but she's also someone who I haven't felt a great deal of urgency to read, just because I feel like I know this isn't true, but there's a way in which, because she is something of a phenom, feels like a not quite the right word, but you know what I mean. There's a lot of people on the internet who post about Joan Didion who are trying to embody or describe a Didion-esque aesthetic. There's a way in which, without reading Joan Didion, I still feel like I had an okay idea of what Joan Didion was about as an artist.
Right. Yeah.
I will say this book did not necessarily change my feeling about getting the general vibe of her and her work, but I did like this book, and it does make me want to read more.
Yeah. And I think also to what you were saying, John, I think there's something of her as being somewhat of a signifier.
Yeah.
We're talking about of what she's a signifier of exactly. I mentioned cool, but I think there's more to it. And I'm also somewhat fascinated. We didn't read her reporting, like her nonfiction, but she's interesting to me as somebody of the new journalism school. Because I feel like when you hear new journalism, you mostly think about like drunk men, like Hunter S. Thompson,
Tom Wolfe.
I mean, I guess Tom Wolfe is just like a white guy in a suit, like or a guy in a white suit. I think it's Hunter S. Thompson.
I mean, I guess he's actually a little more like Didion than those guys you're thinking of.
I think there's a letter where Thompson is like, "You motherfucker" in your white suit. This is meant like affectionately. So I think Didion presents a more like, I think, sensible and rational alternative to some of that, which can be a lot, or Norman Mailer even, which could be kind of like, look at me, I'm part of the story. And I think Didion, even though of what my impression was, it's more about like reporting what's happening. And I think in this book, some of that kind of like that matter of factness, I think, is evident to me. So yeah.
Yeah. You know, most journalists, God bless their hearts, they want to be literary writers. They can't do it. That's why they do journalism instead.
Right.
Didion appears to have been the rare person who can do both.
Yeah, and equally well. So it appears. So should we dive in, talk about the book?
Yeah, I don't have too much else to say about Didion that I don't think will presumably come out as we're talking about the book. So play it as it lays for those who are uninitiated. This is, like Ben said, a 1970 novel. I would argue maybe a novella. Don't have the exact word count in front of me, but 214 pages. One of those pages pretty short.
Yeah, and as I was telling John, I mean, if you take the definition that a novel is a novella with something wrong with it, I think this qualifies. But yeah, there's quite a lot of like short paragraph chapters, which is interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk more about that as we get into the style of the book. But just in kind of a way of laying out the main thrust of the book here, we kind of follow the mental breakdown of a 31-year-old former film actress living in Los Angeles, Mariah. Wyeth, yes. Yeah. Who is, a young woman who grew up in kind of a middle of nowhere town in Nevada, a town so small that it literally no longer exists and has been replaced by a missile range.
Yeah, Silver Wells. Yeah.
She moves to New York, becomes an actress, ends up moving to LA after a messy relationship with a not so great man, moves to LA, gets involved in movies, ends up in another relationship with another not so great man, has a child with an unspecified health problem. And when we find her at the beginning of the book, there's kind of an interesting thrust at the very beginning where we get kind of these three short, almost monologues by kind of the main surviving players of our story.
Yeah.
Mariah, Helen, and Carter. Helen is a friend of Mariah's, and Carter is her husband or ex-husband, depending on quite where like the divorce proceedings have turned out. We don't quite, I think, get the full picture of where that stands by the end of the book.
Yeah.
But Mariah has been admitted to a mental hospital. She has been held legally liable for the wrongful death of kind of the fourth main character of the book, Beezy, a friend of Helene's husband, a friend of Mariah and Carter's, who at the very end of the book, spoilers, in flashback, we find out that this man took a bunch of sleeping pills and killed himself. Mariah stood by and just kind of let it happen rather than doing her due diligence and calling an ambulance or the police. And so she's been held liable for that and has pled more or less insanity to get admitted to a mental hospital rather than go to prison.
And we should also mention, I think you might have mentioned it in passing, she has a kid, but the kid is
also in like a care facility of some kind.
Because it has sort of like an undisclosed like chemical imbalance in her brain or something. The language gets kind of foggy around what the kid actually has.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if Didion even had an actual diagnosis in mind when she was writing this character. But yeah, it seems like the little we see of Kate, her daughter, she has issues with rage and violence, breaking things,
throwing things down.
So there's some kind of ill-defined mental health problem that is bad enough that a 4-year-old has apparently been admitted to a psychiatric institution,
which might have been Didion might have been apparently drawing on a real life occurrence where she had a daughter who was in a psychiatric institution.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I don't remember what the daughter was there for, but it was a more concrete diagnosis than the one.
I mean, presumably.
Right. Yeah. So, and I mean, that pretty much covers the plot. We could also mention that Mariah's father was kind of a hustler and a con man, but not a very successful one. He was definitely a gambler as well.
One of the first things we learn is that he lost their house in Reno gambling. Like he put the house up as collateral and lost, so they had to move down to Silver Wells, Nevada. Population at the time 28. I think population at the time per the book at the start of the book 0.
It's now part of the missile range. She occasionally sees her father's friend, I think Benny Austin is his name, and it's sort of uncomfortable to see him because he's always just like, hey, like, remember the good old days, and like there weren't any. So yeah, more or less. Also, like they both like he drinks a lot of Cuba Libres, which is an interesting character detail. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers the plot. We could also say too that Carter is pressuring her to get an abortion because she is pregnant at some point during the plots of the book. That
is a major incident. I think we'll get into that. Again, the book, if you have not read it, it's not told as like a linear narrative. So we start at the end and then we have interspersed cuts of the past. But even then, it's not like we flash back, to like 3 years ago and then follow events like in chronological order to get us back to that beginning point. We're constantly cutting between different points in Mariah's life leading up to this death
of BZ.
But the timeline, I don't want to say it gets tricky exactly because I don't think Didion is necessarily like trying to trick us. But it's just like I mean, frankly, like it feels again like it feels like Didion is really trying to evoke a certain vibe here. And that vibe is being on downers driving down the highway.
Because we're told that like Mariah has given to sort of ceaselessly driving around in her car because she's upset. Maybe she's processing some stuff. But there's a lot of descriptions of her just driving around, on downers, and just kind of vibing.
So there's like a hazy, like very dreamlike kind of atmosphere. Like we're seeing kind of a lot of these events as Mariah is through kind of a fog, a mental fog, and that makes some of the edges of events, and for me at least as I was reading, feel kind of foggy. And I think that's very intentional.
Yeah, and I also think to your point about the chronology, I feel like cutting it up reminds me of something that is more like typically seen in movies than like in a story. And of course, like I'm sure there are stories that have like non-chronological plot, presentation like pre this book. but the husband works in movies. It's set in LA. There's kind of like a interesting foggy like cinematic presentation as well.
Yeah, there's cuts.
Yeah, exactly.
In a way, like there's a montage quality, especially when we get to those shorter chapters where it's like a half or even a quarter page of words before you are at the next chapter.
Yeah, just like shuffled into the next scene.
Yeah, and a lot of times, like especially when we get to those shorter chapters, like they are not establishing clearly like when is this in the sequence of events. You kind of are left to piece that together based on what she's saying or who she's talking to. In some cases it's more obvious than others, but it is a very like montagey book. In fact, I think this is as close as literature can get to montage.
Yeah, and that thought kind of crossed my mind too, the kind of like a lot of the scenes you have to sort of pay attention to like what's being implied, because no one ever says like you are depressed or like I am depressed. It's like based on their behavior, based on like how the conversation is progressing. There's an interesting kind of like implication of what's being said, which I think is also kind of like a filmic element to it. So it's I found myself thinking, maybe not unsurprisingly, about social media a lot as I was reading this book. Not so much because this is a book about social media, because that would be impossible for Joan Didion to have written in 1970. Right.
But I was thinking a lot about how different, our relationship to our own actions is now. I think about the way that, this book, there's a way in which like this woman is having this mental breakdown and the only people who can see it are people she actually knows.
Yes.
And kind of the like hothouse feeling of that, the way that it's like this woman is clearly having a lot of problems. At the start of the book, her parents are both deceased. She really does not have like an outside support system.
Yes. Yeah.
Besides, her kind of shitty husband who, they both are cheating on each other.
Yeah.
Just there's a real sense of isolation throughout this book. And it feels pretty apropos to me that like this book takes place primarily in California in the 60s. It's something that I feel, obviously I didn't experience it, but we've been, to maybe to date the podcast a little bit, we went to go see Marty Supreme yesterday, the new Timothy Chalamet, was it Benny Safdie? Josh Safdie, that's right, film. And that movie takes place, yes, in the 50s. But I found myself kind of thinking, just because I was reading this and watching that, basically simultaneously, about how New York is portrayed in the film versus like how California is portrayed here. Marty Supreme, it's all about like people living on top of each other, like literally falling, like roofs collapsing. Right, there not being any space, to find any kind of privacy or room like for thought in a lot of ways, versus here where it's like these long stretches of highway, like dividing up these, presumably opulent but mostly empty mansions,
right? Yeah,
in the Hollywood Hills,
and then just like scenes of just one person talking to another person with all this like white space around it, kind of. Yeah, I have a quote about the highway driving. We could just read it to get a sense of the prose. In the first hot month of the fall after the summer, she left Carter. The summer Carter left her. The summer Carter stopped living in the house in Beverly Hills. Mariah drove the freeway. She dressed every morning with a greater sense of purpose than she had felt in some time. A cotton skirt, a jersey, sandals she could kick off when she wanted the touch of the accelerator, and she dressed very fast, running a brush through her hair once or twice and tying it back with a ribbon. For as essential to pause was to throw herself into unspeakable peril that she be on the freeway by 10 o'clock. Not somewhere on Hollywood Boulevard, not on her way to the freeway, but actually on the freeway. If she was not, she lost the day's rhythm, its precariously imposed momentum. Once she was on the freeway and had maneuvered her way to the fast lane, she turned on the radio at high volume, and she drove. She drove the San Diego to the harbor up to the Hollywood to the Golden State, the Santa Monica to the Santa Ana, the Pasadena, the Ventura. She drove it as a riverman runs a river, every day more attuned to its currents, its deceptions, and just as a riverman feels the pull of the rapids in the lull between sleeping and waking, so Mariah lay at night in the still of Beverly Hills and saw the great sign soar overhead at 70 miles an hour. Normandy, 1/4 a mile. Yeah, so just even in that, like the idea that she has to keep moving, and it's all about going to these various places on the freeway. And I like the implication, too, that she's, like, dreaming of the space, which I think is very fitting to what you're talking about. It's more about, like, the space being traversed than, like, being cramped, like in Marty Supreme. So.
Yeah, no. Yeah, you know, it's something where I have often thought about LA as a place that I would never want to live.
Yeah.
You know, I consider myself like a city person for the most part, and LA is like basically the one like big city in America that I could never see myself even wanting to visit to some degree.
Yeah.
Because it is just like, it's all the things I hate about like American urban space, just like cranked to 11.
Right, yeah, just like being in the car all the time, everything's so spread out.
Yeah. I mean, I lived in Houston, which is not dissimilar in a way, but I wouldn't go back to Houston either. So
yeah, like urban sprawl, like these, like, yeah, sort of all these boroughs being connected and then just spending a lot of time in the car.
Yeah. I mean, just this sense of like, I don't know, there's something that I find really like disorienting, and I think this book again does a good job breaking out, you know, about being surrounded by, again, LA's the second biggest city in America. I don't know if it was quite there in like when this book takes place, but it was obviously getting there. But just like this sense in which you are like totally atomized despite living like surrounded by people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Rather, like in Marty Supreme, it was all just like people like yelling at each other and like living on top of each other. Yeah.
I don't know. The one seems more appealing to me than the other, but I'm also a weirdo who liked living in a dorm. So
yeah.
I don't know. The way space is used in this book is fascinating. I mean, I think, you know, there's a lot about this book in terms of like hypnotism. She sees a hypnotist at one point. You know, I think there's something kind of hypnotizing about the prose. Yeah. Maybe again, not snakes play a big role in this in as kind of an image in this book. So I'm kind of like almost associating to like a snake charmer is like an idea here.
There's a snake on the cover of my edition too.
Yeah, no, that's kind of the iconic cover.
Yeah.
But yeah, the way Didion, I think, really does put you in the shoes of this character, and like, I've never taken downers, but I feel like, you know, insofar as a book can give you an idea of like what that feeling is like.
Yeah.
It feels closer than like other things I've read.
I also particularly like the repeated phrase of like playing the game, which like I think for Mariah means like having to do what you're supposed to do in social situations. And when you're on downers, I imagine it would be hard to tell what you're supposed to do. And there's several moments where she says like she realized something real was happening. Like it's like a couple of sentences. And so there's kind of like this interesting remove where everything doesn't feel real. It's hypnotic. And there's like a distance between what's happening to her and what's happening like outside of her.
Yeah. I mean, she spends most of the like book we see like in like various stages of like dissociation.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I think is obviously like a big part of what the book is saying.
Yeah.
You know, there's a way in which, I don't know, I kind of found myself wondering, you know, like, what do we see of Mariah that is real? Because she's an actor. She is someone who like her job is to not have like a core.
Right.
She has grown up in this kind of deprived childhood that seems like it kind of kept her from developing much in the way of stable connections or yeah. You know, even like, you know, she goes to New York, but it doesn't really seem like it's something that she's doing. Like, she doesn't seem to have a passion for acting. We never like kind of see like what pushed her to do that other than just like, I want to leave this town of 28 people.
Right. Yeah. I need to get out. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I don't quite know what to make of that. You know, what is real in this book? And
well, I mean, so I think it would be good to talk about the baby then.
Yeah.
This is also in this movie kind of reminds me of The Blackout by Abel Ferrara, but I'll get to that later. So basically she has a kid, and if I remember correctly, doesn't Carter like basically tell her that it's not his kid?
I don't recall that part.
Okay. I think there was some like weird implication of just like, because you're sleeping around ... or something. Like, I think they like argue about it in some way, but maybe I'm
well, I don't know if there's I think Kate is Carter's child.
Oh, okay. So
I think that the second baby, the one that is aborted, is not, or at least that she does not think it is.
Yeah, and so like I think the potential of the baby and the abortion becomes something real.
Yeah,
I think, as well as later Beezy's suicide is like a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like the sort of dealing with like how you had to get an abortion then, how it's like the super secretive thing, and like the doctor's really weird to her.
Yeah.
And he keeps like saying like, you should be so happy I'm doing this, like, and not really comforting her at all. And like the way that she sort of like gets even more disassociative, I would say, after she has the abortion, where like she steals that guy's car at the party after sleeping with him, and then she gets picked up by the cops. So the baby and like the suicide are the real things, and like the threat of something real happening that's gonna like puncture this like weird stasis kind of. And I think too, like that's to me a move that I think is quite not cliched, but I feel like I've seen it a lot now. And I don't know if Didion was the first one to do it, but in that regard, it's a lot like Bret Easton Ellis, like Less Than Zero, like when they goes to the party and they see the snuff film, and also like not quite American Psycho, but like I reading this, I could tell like what a big influence this would have been on Bret Easton Ellis, where there's again like this cold remove, this like stasis fogginess that then is like punctured by violence or like something real happening, and then the characters have to deal with.
Yeah.
And I think that's to me an interesting construction for the book, is like that's the core, is like dealing with these things that happen. And that's like what makes characters like, you know, do something real or like actually understand what's happening to them.
Yeah,
So,
like birth and death are like the only real things.
and like in the movie The Blackout, like he's an actor. I think he's in like Malibu. I can't remember where, but he's just lost in this like fog of like pill addiction and alcohol. And he keeps telling this girl that he's in love with that he wants a baby. And then he, in a haze, accidentally kills a woman that looks like her, and then realizes, like, as he's getting sober, that he needs to get drunk again to remember what happened. But, like, the baby is branded as, like, the only real thing in this world, basically. And then once he kills the random woman that looks like her, that's, like, the thing he has to atone for. So
yeah, you know, I don't know. I'm kind of getting like Buddhist vibes now, where it's like I missed one of the three sorrows in there. So we have birth, we have death. There's also old age. That's a real specter in this book. I don't know if it's quite as at the forefront as the other two, but I think we mentioned Mariah is 31.
Yeah,
she's clearly concerned about her ability to do the things she wants to do, or to kind of continue living as she's grown accustomed to as she gets older.
Yeah.
There's a point late in the book where she's out at, I think, a restaurant, and she sees like an older man and a younger woman together, and she kind of, again, like fades out of the conversation only to like kind of come up for air and see like the younger woman like looking at her, then saying to like her companion like, 37, but she's a good 37.
yeah.
And, you know, so it's like, if she looks good for someone older than her.
Right, which is not what she wants.
Which is a real backhanded compliment.
Yeah.
But yeah, like these are the only things that are real, and everything else is kind of clouded like this. And even, you know, I think that the relationship she has to Kate is a fascinating part of the book, because like I said, we don't see a ton of it. She's clearly like, she is affectionate towards Kate as much as like she can be, like through this haze.
Doesn't Kate say like she's always like self-centered about Mariah? I can't remember if Kate says that in that opening monologue, but yeah.
But, and you know, she kind of has this fantasy of like getting Kate out of the mental institution.
Oh wait, Kate, the kid. Sorry, I was confusing with the friend. Anyway,
yes.
Yeah.
Getting Kate out of this mental institution she's in and like being able to raise her like more or less alone and, you know, providing for her daughter in this way that like does read very sweet, but also reads as like kind of delusional, and like the fact that like it seems as though Mariah like can't really cope with the idea that like her daughter actually does have a problem.
Yeah, she wants to assume everything's normal, and then it's always like the kid throwing stuff down, like we said.
Yeah. You know, makes it clear that like, oh, she couldn't do this even if she wasn't like on barbiturates or whatever.
Right. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, there's not really a reckoning with what it would be like to be a parent.
Yeah. Just like this rosy ideal of what it would look like, you know, contrasted with, I think, you know, she has this very kind of rosy image of her own mother at the start of the book, despite her mother kind of being clearly like a miserable woman for most of her life. I mean, how could she not be, considering the circumstances she found herself in?
When her mom got in like a car crash. Right?
Yeah. But, you know, her mom was clearly a desperately unhappy woman trapped in like a bad marriage.
Yeah.
And, you know, Mariah has now found herself in a similar situation, but she keeps looking for this thing to cling to. And I think motherhood becomes an easy, like, redemptive story she can tell herself. And so, you know, obviously the abortion scene is really skeevy and uncomfortable. But I think there's almost this way that like birth becomes like instrumentalized more than parenthood is.
Yes.
Like birth is like what the focus is on, because that's something real. But then once the kid is actually there, it kind of just becomes another like fantasy object. Yeah,
because like nobody there is like ever shown with children. They're always like either trying to make their movie, or they're doing drugs, or they're like drinking. Like there's kind of just like no real parenting happens in the book. So
this is kind of a tangent, but this is one of those books where I just kind of like realized like, damn, people used to drink so much more.
So much. Yeah. Like, yeah, just they're always like having drinks whenever they're hanging out, just any time.
Yeah, multiple drinks. Like, I don't know.
Oh, man, I actually I watched The Swimmer for the first time, which I was actually thinking about The Swimmer compared to this book. And I think The Swimmer is a little more like the 50s like male like Don Draper version of this, but like every time he meets a new person in The Swimmer, they ask if he wants a drink. And so like he's like swimming in alcohol as much as he's trying to swim in every pool in the neighborhood. Like there's just so many times they're just like, would you like a drink? And he's like, well, of course, you know. So but yeah, like, so I also want to talk about, we should talk about BZ just a little bit, because you had an interesting point about him. Wasn't there an implication that he was like abusive to his wife, who is Mariah's friend Helen? There's like a really weird scene where they keep like remembering, like they keep like coming to, and like maybe like one of them has like a black eye or something. It's like they were doing some like weird S&M game that went too far. I don't know. Like,
yeah, I'm honestly not sure. I think I mentioned to you as we were kind of pre talking before the podcast started, I almost wondered if BZ was supposed to be a gay character.
Yeah.
Just because like it's established pretty early on that his marriage to Helene is a sham, and that they're both only still in it because his mother like gives them like a pretty hefty amount of money like every month to basically keep the sham marriage up.
Right. Yeah.
Which to me, like, I don't know, I couldn't like help but read that as like, oh, this is like a lavender marriage.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess he could be bi too. That's obviously possible. We never like see him with a man,
right? Yeah,
explicitly. There are some mentions of homosexual, like explicitly homosexual people in the book. Usually, like, there are queers at parties.
Yeah, Mariah doesn't like them. In fact, I think I remember seeing some reviews that was like, I couldn't read this because Mariah was a gay hater. I think again, Mariah, I don't think is, you know, she does use the slur a lot. So,
yeah, no, I mean, this is before the great concord between fags and hags.
Yeah, that's what could have saved Mariah. So.
But you know, there's something very strange about BZ.
Yeah, I imagine he wears like totally opaque sunglasses. Yeah, that's why I imagine his character.
You know, like there is and particularly with his relationship with Mariah, like he never makes a move on her.
Yeah.
In the book. despite them spending like a lot of time together,
Yeah.
a lot of time alone from what we can tell.
Yeah, and I think there's a scene where they first meet and like he's like watching a porno, and I think there's like a gangbang happening, and he's doing like
I don't know if it's a porno. It's the first movie she was in, Angel Beach, which is I guess not a rape revenge movie, but I don't think it was a porno.
Well, wasn't there like a scene where BZ was like talking about the meaning of like a gangbang scene?
Yeah, well, because like the plot of this movie she's in is that she's raped by a biker gang, but I don't think it's I don't think it's porn. I don't think that like sex actually happens.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But he's watching this and like is asking Carter like if basically like does Mariah have any thoughts about what's happening to her character, or is she just empty?
Right, yeah.
Well, and then the other thing that he does, we find out, so the first movie she makes with Carter is Angel Beach, which is a movie that sounds really weird to me. Like I don't know, I don't feel like I've ever seen a movie from the 60s like with that kind of a vibe to it.
Yeah.
I mean, like Last House on the Left is the only thing I could think of, but this didn't come across like it was like a revenge movie exactly. Like I didn't get what happens other than this in this movie. Maybe that is again somewhat the point.
Description of Angel Beach. The second picture she had made with Carter was called Angel Beach, and in it she played a girl who was raped by the members of a motorcycle gang. Carter had brought the picture in for $340,000, and the studio had Saturation booked it. And by the end of the first year, the domestic and foreign gross was just under $8 million. Mariah had seen it twice, once at a studio preview and a second time by herself at a drive-in in Culver City, and neither time did she have any sense that the girl on the screen was herself. I look at you and I know that what happened didn't just mean anything, the girl on the screen would say, and there's a lot more to living than just kicks. I see that now. Kicks are nowhere. So sort of a strange 60s movie. Yeah.
But the other movie she's made with Carter at this point that gets mentioned in the book at least is this art piece, which is basically Carter. I don't know how he was doing this with 50s camera equipment, but basically just following her around New York.
Yeah.
And like, I guess like semi-artfully shooting her, just like going about her life. So like a fashion shoot, her like at a party, asleep on a couch, her like cleaning marijuana. Because presumably we're talking about 60s marijuana, which was like 80% seeds and stems.
Right. Yeah.
Before they invented anything but mids.
But
BZ, like this art film, I think comes out to like a little over an hour, and it apparently like won an award in like an Eastern European film festival.
Oh yeah, okay, I'm remembering now. Yeah.
And BZ like screens it all the time.
Yeah.
And Mariah, like, it makes Mariah uncomfortable that he does this.
Yeah.
But he keeps doing it. And it's an incredibly weird, like, character beat that, again, I don't know what to make of entirely.
Well, I wonder if there's, like, again, like a preoccupation with it being real, because it's not like a narrative. But at the same time, she's being filmed. It's not real. But, like,
she's just as dissociated.
Right.
Like, you know, it doesn't feel any realer to her, it seems like, than the movie where she's playing an explicitly like a character.
Yeah. That would be weird if someone was just watching your like realistic movie avant-garde piece just all the time.
Yeah. And again, like I don't get the impression that BZ is like doing this like because he's horny for her.
Yeah.
I feel like it's almost this thing where he is almost like fascinated with her because she is so like depersonalized.
Yeah.
Which seems to be something he wants for himself.
Or that like he also feels like, I think it gets very close to asking like, don't you just wish you could like get away from all this? It's like, you're just like me, aren't you? Kind of. Yeah. Which is an interesting, again, that's I feel like a trope that I feel like I've seen a lot in this kind of stuff, like the friend who tries to convince you that the main character that they're just like him, and the narrative also comes down on like, is Mariah just like BZ? Like where's the story gonna end up?
Well, that brings us back to the game metaphor.
Yeah.
You know, towards the end of the novel, Mariah relates a lesson, some lessons she picked up from her father, one of which was in a craps game, you play it as it lays.
Yeah.
Which he says, play it as it lays, don't do it the hard way.
Right.
Which I think basically means like play the hand you're dealt.
Yeah.
I don't again know I don't know anything about craps, so I don't know what that really means. Maybe I should have done more research, but you know, play the hand you're dealt.
Yeah.
Don't struggle, basically, I guess is the implication. It's like, take things as they come, but don't like fight, because I assume the idea is like, if you actively like try and want things, like you're only going to be disappointed.
Right. Yeah.
The other thing she learns is if you look under a rock, you're liable to find a rattlesnake.
Yeah.
Which I think basically has the same message. It's like, if you try, if you actually like go out and like try to change the world or do things or live your life in an active way, like you're just going to get hurt.
Right. Yeah. Or like, and I think too, from the gambler thing, it's like, it's harder to try to get a specific roll.
Yeah.
Like you have to just sort of deal with whatever's rolling at the time. So
yeah. But Mariah says there's kind of this dichotomy that gets drawn between, either you keep playing the game or you quit.
Right. And that's kind of what BZ is headed in that direction. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess, you can play it in terms of, you can play it as it lays. You can take this passive stance to reality, this depressive mode, or you can, again, I don't know that we really see this illustrated. I guess, you can take an active mode, even if it's disappointing.
Yeah.
You can take yourself out of the game.
Right. Yeah.
But those are your options.
Yeah. There's no kind of midway point.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. If only someone could have, expounded the noble eightfold path to Mariah, maybe she could have been saved.
A cool Buddhist character. Yeah.
Amitabha Butsu.
Yeah.
Or Namu Amida Butsu.
Yeah, I mean, and two, like with the BZ thing, like when he basically says like, I have all these pills, like I'm going to take myself out of the game, Mariah just kind of lets him do it.
Yeah.
And
and crucially, he offers, do you want some?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Mariah could leave and she doesn't.
Yes.
And again, that's another move I feel like in terms of like, you're just like me, I'm not like you, but I will still support your decision kind of to do this, even though it ends her in the psych ward. And I think too, like that's another real moment is when he just goes, would you hold me?
Yeah.
And so like they're, I guess, presumably holding each other, at which point like Mariah wakes up and all the lights are on, everyone's found the dead body.
Yeah.
And then she's in the psych ward at the end. So.
Yeah. It's a rough scene, to be honest. It's like, obviously, like, I don't know, there is like a sweetness in terms of like being there for her friend, like when he's going through this transition.
Yeah.
But like it kind of freaked me out a little bit. I don't know. Like I something about like taking a bunch of sleeping pills as like a mode of suicide just really freaks me out. Over other stuff.
Yeah.
I think it is interesting that BZ, again, maybe this is again where maybe I'm picking up queer themes, but he takes a bunch of sleeping pills, which is a classically feminine way of killing yourself.
Right. Yeah.
Like, there are statistics that have been done, women tend to take sleeping pills or kind of other like, I don't want to say less lethal, but more reversible means of committing suicide. Whereas most men just like get a gun.
Right. Okay. So I have the scene here. You want some? She looked at him. No. You're still playing. BZ did not take his eyes from hers. Someday you'll wake up and you just won't feel like playing anymore. That's a queen's way of doing it. I never expected you to fall back on style as an argument. I'm not arguing. I know that. You think I'd be here if I didn't know that? She took his hand and held it. Why are you here? Because you and I, we know something. Because we've been out there where nothing is. Because I wanted, you know why. Lie down here, she said after a while, just go to sleep. And so he takes the pills. She was almost asleep when she sensed that his weight had shifted. Don't. After she had said it, she opened her eyes. He was swallowing the capsules with a glass of water. There were not many left on the bed. Don't start faking me now. BZ turned off the light and lay down again. Take my hand. Go back to sleep. I'm sorry, she said after a while. Hold on to me, BZ said. When Mariah woke again, the room was blazing with light and Carter was shaking her and Helene was screaming. Mariah thought she had never heard anyone scream the way Helen screamed. She closed her eyes against the light and her ears against Helen and her mind against what was going to happen in the next few hours and tightened her hold on BZ's hand. Yeah. Really like that nice little run-on bit at the end there. Yeah, so.
Yeah. No, I mean, Didion is a good writer. Like
Yeah,
I honestly like have chills at the moment.
Well, yeah, because it's so, again, there's like this interesting like depth to what they're saying, but it's all like on the surface, the writing.
Yeah.
So
No, I mean, again, like I think she does this amazing job of creating this weird, like, again, this uncanny sense of distance.
Yeah.
This way in which like you are at a remove, but like it doesn't protect you from anything.
right, yeah,
You know, I almost feel like if she, like, let's just say like a different version of this book was written and like this is like the breaking point,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden like the prose becomes like much more descriptive and like trying to put us in the scene,
right, yeah,
and like describing everything that's happening, and we're getting all the dialogue. It'd be worse.
yeah.
Like it would be worse stylistically, and it would have less of an impact. It would it would feel like I would feel maybe better after like I wouldn't feel as intensely bad as I felt reading that.
Right, because you'd be safe in all those details.
Exactly. Exactly. Like I could lose myself in the style, and in the description and whatnot, and I wouldn't feel the same level of emotional impact.
Yeah, it's like interestingly spare in a way that like kind of reminds me of Hemingway, but doing its own thing.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
In terms of things being on the surface and versus like the sort of tension underneath it, especially that bit. We've been out there where nothing is. And I think that's another indication of like space too,
Mm-hmm.
like describing the idea of there not being any meaning as just being like this empty landscape that you're driving through or something. So
yeah, I mean, empty space is again a theme in the book.
Yeah.
You know, again, I keep thinking about going from like the desert of Nevada to New York City to California.
Yeah.
And sort of in a way, like the way that is kind of like, it's not her quite like going back to her childhood home exactly, but she's returning like to the West, to like her ancestral region, more or less.
Right.
You know, there's this, we don't get a ton about her life in New York. We know she falls in with this, not quite gangster. That's not the word I want to use, but he's like a manipulative, like asshole who clearly like is a guy who like snatches up young women when they show up like fresh out the bus, uses them for everything he can, and then moves on.
Sort of like a pimp, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, a player maybe, who, yeah, she's like involved with him, and he, you know, is using her and abusing her before she leaves to go back to California. But we don't really see much else of like New York. And even like later in the book, she calls this guy, his name's Ivan, basically like kind of looking for either like a shoulder to cry on or like some kind of reconnection.
Yeah.
Like there's this way in which it seems like she feels like her relationship with him was realer than like what she's had with Carter. This is while their marriage is breaking down.
I think so. Is that when they like meet up at the hotel, or is that a different scene? Yeah.
Yeah. He calls her, she calls him, and then I think they meet up at the hotel.
That scene was brutal because the way they're like talking, it's like they're never going to do anything.
No.
Like,
I mean, he basically tells her like, I think you're disgusting. Which I don't, again, like he's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't want to sympathize with him, but also like, I don't know. I assume this, like at this point, like I think that it's referenced in the scene, like she weighs like 82 pounds. She is like wasting I can't imagine how she looks good even for 37 at this point. She's 82 pounds. She's like constantly high on downers.
She's not eating.
She's not eating anything.
Yeah.
Again, like I'm not trying to be crass when I say this, but like I think this is purposeful on Didion's part.
Right.
Like, she probably looks like a space alien.
Yeah.
Like I'm picturing again, like again, maybe I'm don't quite have like the time period dress right, but imagining her like showing up with like the like silk headscarf and the big sunglasses and like taking them off and just looking horrible.
Yeah, or like what is it? That picture of David Bowie when he was doing all that cocaine and not eating, and like you can see all his bones in his face.
Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah. But,
no, I mean, I like this book. Like I think Didion, like you said, there is like something definitely of the Hemingway in there.
yeah.
But I don't even want to be so crass as to be like, oh, this is like a woman doing, like, this is the feminine Hemingway. I think that's like such a trite and like frankly insulting way to put it.
Yeah, and like,
but in terms of like getting to that like knife-like core of the prose, where you're implying so much in so little that like the reader's imagination just kind of can't help but like expand to fill all that space.
Right, yeah, and because when I wrote up Hemingway, it was less that I wanted to say she was that, and more like...
No, I'm not saying you were. I'm just saying, like, I don't want to say that.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, because that would be weird.
Because that feels like a hack thing you could say.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and, like, that quality of, like, just surf it, like, the dialogue seems mundane, but when you're actually reading it, the implication is a lot of stuff that's not being said, so, yeah. But, and again, I feel like people do that now in a way that reads more like film dialogue than like making you like actually uncomfortable. So
yeah. You know, it's again interesting. You know, Joan Didion was born in I think 1937, and obviously like film and even like television would obviously have been around for, well, you know, film was a thing way before she was born, and like television became a thing, you know, while she was alive. But there is something, I think there is genuinely something that has changed in like prose as like video content has gotten just more and more accessible.
Right. Yeah.
Because again, it used to be like you had to go to the movies. You know, you could do that every day if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But you had to go. And now it's like, yeah, you can just watch television and movies like all day. And I do think that it has affected the way like dialogue in particular is written now.
Yeah.
Not necessarily always for the worse, but there is something about like, oh, this is a book written like in a way that does not, like the dialogue does not feel filmic in any way.
Well, and if anything, it reminded me of something like a Cassavetes movie where like he would have his actors improv, and then the movie often has that like montage effect where you're just like suddenly seeing a scene, you don't know where you are, the way people are talking implies something else, and then you're just on to the next scene.
Yeah.
Like, the part that stuck with me about like film or video content impacting prose was there was that essay about romantasy that came out a while ago. It was a little too glib in some places, but it made a point that like some of the romantasy sex scenes are so incredibly graphic because its audience has been mostly like desensitized to these things because of scrolling content, video porn. And so like you have to hear all of the sex organ sounds because that's what you hear if you're watching the porn. Like, and that kind of stuck with me. I'm like, okay, I can definitely buy that, like in terms of presentation. And I think like, yeah, I think the spareness of this is really refreshing in terms of like being hyper detailed or like written like I want this to be adapted into a movie. So,
yeah. You know, I don't want to get like too lost in the sauce on this tangent, obviously, but there definitely is something where, you know, I think that's part of why like I've come to enjoy reading so much more as I've gotten older, is because it's less stimulating.
Yeah.
Like I have to like do more of the work. I don't want to be like, oh, books are, I mean, I guess we have done that several times in this show. Movies aren't sending their best, folks. But there is something in terms of like, oh, like I'm not being like constantly like assaulted with everything all at once. Like I can like choose to focus and like imagine as like I want to within the context of the book that feels good.
You're contributing.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a texture there that I don't think is totally absent with film, but I think is much harder to find.
Well, and like that's why, not to go back on the Cassavetes tip, but when you watch Cassavetes, it can be like exhausting because every scene you have to like be like, okay, why is this happening? Like, where are we? Like I watched Killing of a Chinese Bookie, which some like knowledgeable film people compared Marty Supreme to, and in that one you're just constantly like, you're like, where's this bar? Like, what is he doing? And like there's sort of a surrealness aspect to it, but like it adds up because you're doing the work. So
yeah. Well, I guess since we're kind of like shifting gears a little bit towards like the contemporary, for lack of a better term, I did want to talk a little bit about not so much exactly like where this book in particular fits into like modern day, but I know we kind of wanted to talk a little bit about, again, kind of the Didion affect and the way that like this book and like I think the Didion aesthetic, the interesting kind of like life that has had, like is currently living, and I think has you know like had various permutations over the years, I assume.
Right.
But kind of the interesting place, like something like this plays in like the modern day, for lack of a better term. Like we said at the beginning, like this is
cool.
Yeah, like Didion is like a writer who, when I think about like what a cool girl on Instagram who talks about books, like what she's like posting, she's reading, it's like Didion is up there.
Yeah.
And I don't even mean this in like a bad way.
Right.
There's definitely like a way you can read maybe some of the things I'm going to say as critical. Like I don't think this is like a woman problem or necessarily even bad.
Right.
I just think it's interesting in the context of like this book in particular, and a lot of Didion's other writing, I think, where, you know, she is this person who is observing things and she's there. You know, I'm thinking kind of about her essays on like mansions in California, where she's being critical, but like she's there.
Right.
Like she's one of these people, even while she's like at a remove.
And that, I mean, that's the new journalism thing too.
Exactly. But you know, I think about the way that like trying to embrace like a Didion-esque affect is in vogue these days. And I don't want to like speculate too much about like, why is that? Because I don't really think that that's what I'm interested in. But I do think there's something interesting about like taking a book like this and finding something aspirational in it. And again, not saying this is a unique to women problem at all. Like, I think I said, as we were talking about this earlier, like a lot of people signed up to join the Nazi army because they read Storm of Steel by Ernst Jünger.
Right. Yeah.
This is like an odd human problem of I guess we'll say mimesis.
I want to live the story.
I want to live the story. And then the way that like this book is describing a woman leading like a horrible life,
a lot of emotional distress that's like, you know, under the surface of everything. So,
but the way that kind of like attempting to imitate like something happening in a work of art becomes like this shorthand for like either the type of person you want people to think you are, or like the type of life you're leading. And I think that's really, particularly again, like today in the world of social media, you know, I found myself thinking again a lot about the way that like this woman is like trapped in this hot house with like 4 people basically, because she's so atomized. Yeah. And, you know, as much as I still am guessing modern LA can feel very atomizing, now we live in the panopticon.
Right.
Like no one else is watching this woman do this except these like 4 people who are more or less indifferent to her.
Right. Yeah. She'd probably be posting through it, I think, as you were talking about.
Yeah. No, if this was happening today, she'd be posting through it. And probably none of those people would be helping her either.
Right. Yeah.
But there is something qualitatively different about like 1 million people observing you versus 4 people observing you.
Yeah.
And I particularly found myself thinking about, and I hate to bring this up at some level, but a particular piece, I don't remember who wrote it now, but one of the various like tongue jobs Olivia Nuzzi has received from the, nematode political journalists who have been defending her these last several months. Political journalists, one of the lowest classes of human beings, in my frank opinion. But I remember like this image of her like driving like a convertible down like the LA highway.
Sounds like I was going to mention Lana Del Rey. I feel like is also
listening to Lana Del Rey, who I'm a big fan of. Let me start off with that. I'm a Lana Del Rey fan. I'm a Lana Del Rey stan, you could say.
Well, because I feel like that kind of fits in with the sort of like the detachment, the older men, the like empty glamour, like what's real.
But also like this thing where it becomes like aspirational because you're aestheticizing it to this degree.
Right. Yeah.
But the way in which like, but in particular, like with the Nuzzy stuff, like the way that is very clearly trying to like draw this parallel where it's like, she's Joan Didion. She's just like Joan Didion.
Right.
By not necessarily even like having her, I don't know if Joan Didion did any of the stuff in this book. I'm assuming she drove down the highway at some point. But I don't know if she was like driving down the highway in like a downer haze and like thinking about an abortion she got.
Right, stealing somebody's car. Yeah,
but again, kind of like this way in which like by saying like, oh, she's doing this thing that's like play it as it lays. She's like Joan Didion, not like because her prose is really like Joan Didion. Olivia Nuzzi is a terrible writer.
The way, I was telling you, John, the sun went up, it went down. It was always doing that. Yeah.
How perceptive. Somebody call Hume.
Yeah. Get him on the phone. Yeah.
we have to talk about the consistency of natural events.
Yeah, like that image, it's like I don't want to say it's like a mood board, but the idea that like you can associate all those things together. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it's like a collection of stuff. So
yeah, and just the way that like, I don't know, I think that social media in particular, like I think really kind of exacerbates this mimetic thing because people are like always performing and you're always trying to like figure out how do I embody like these images that I admire and constantly like running up against the impossibility of that.
Oh man, did I talk to you about that CEO BuzzFeed essay that uses like Lacan and images to talk about weak ego formation?
No,
probably not.
I need you to send that to me.
Yeah, probably not a topic. This is a perennial topic on like philosophy Twitter, like pre 2020, was like the idea that the BuzzFeed CEO was like a philosophy guy at one point, like a theory dude, and he wrote like an essay about how like people can have weak ego attachments to images, and the idea that you could assemble an image of yourself or like a perception of yourself using mood board aesthetics and stuff, you could live it out, but then it would just be gone. Like it's just so like you just move on to the next thing, and then like there's a couple of people who are like, that's what he did with BuzzFeed, you know, like which, you know, who knows if he did or not, but like the idea that he was thinking about like the connection between self and like image construction and how like, you know, social media is so good at that, I think is relevant to what you're saying. So.
Yeah, you know, it's something where I don't know. I think about it again, particularly in terms of literature, you know, the way that, you know, again, and there's a way in which almost we're doing the same thing here doing this podcast.
That's true.
We are curating a collection of books that we think like are interesting to talk about. We're having conversations about them. And there is like a degree to which like we're doing that because we want people who listen to this show, like we're putting out a particular image of ourselves into the world.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
As the type of people who read these kinds of books and have these kinds of conversations. None of this is necessarily bad.
Right, yeah.
I just think it's interesting.
Right, exactly. Like, yeah, it's something that people do.
Yeah,
so,
just it's a human thing that like I like thinking about. And I think, Didion like becomes this interesting exemplar of it because again, she is this person where you read her books, but she looms so large as a figure. And maybe that's because again, she did multiple types of writing. You aren't just reading this novel, you're also reading her essays. There's like this level of access to her as a person through her voice that I think people think they have or can feel like they have in a way that maybe you don't with like a more traditional novelist someone who's just writing stories and like you kind of just have to guess what they're like as a person.
Yeah, there's like a literary persona kind of.
Yeah. And the way that becomes very appealing. And again, associating yourself with it becomes this like powerful act.
Yeah.
In the same way, like, I don't know, medieval guilds had fucking patron saints.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too, like she often gets twinned with one of my favorites, Renata Adler, and like Adler also did journalism. Adler was like a film critic at one point. And there's a kind of like interesting vibe where Adler, whenever she talks about it, it's very much just like, well, I was just doing it. Like there isn't like this sort of, I mean, like she probably was
self-consciousness.
Yeah. It's like there's not as quite as much self-conscious with her stuff, even though I would say it's still there. And like, you know, in Speedboat and Pitch Dark, she's talking about herself.
Yeah. I think Didion is very self-conscious.
Yeah.
Which I think probably has a lot to do with kind of her life and the fact that she like grew up in one of these mansions and like I think felt a lot of pressure to be like to embody images of like a perfect, you know, Californian rich girl in a way that I don't know Adler's background, but maybe Adler didn't. But again, I think we're all like so self-conscious now that maybe that's why Didion kind of feels like it's having a little bit more of a moment.
I can definitely see that. And also the idea of being invested in the thing you're doing.
Yeah.
Like there's no objective viewpoint. It's subjective.
Yeah. Or again, I think another person who I think maybe feels like they're of a piece with the people you're talking about is Sontag, who I'm a big fan of. and who did do some fiction work, but was primarily an essayist and critic.
Yeah.
And is someone who, oddly enough, like I don't feel like I have the same grasp on as an individual.
Yeah, like it's not like this persona.
Yeah, I mean there is a persona there, but it doesn't feel as overwhelming.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are people who will disagree with me on that, but that's just my vibe from what I've read of Sunday.
Well, and I also just want to go back to the using Didion thing, because I remember at the beginning of Lady Bird, I like Greta Gerwig's movies a lot, because I feel like while they're like popular and they get big budgets, it's very clear there's like someone making choices and it's her. Like,
yeah,
and that's why I like them. Like, she like cut up the chronology when she did her Little Women, but in Lady Bird, there's like a very prominent Didion epigraph, which is like, I think nobody who has not known decadence has like never seen A Christmas in Sacramento, which I think is like perfect to the kind of like, yeah, like I'm here. This is also like aristocratic and kind of wealthy, but I also don't really like it because like it's, I'm
tacky.
Yeah, it's tacky. I'm at a remove, so yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Didion is interesting. I think Didion is interesting because I think she's like as close as America can get to like an aristocratic author.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about her essay on like the Reagans like house, and the way that she just like has this contempt for these TV people, more or less,
right.
And the way that America, we do not have like genuine aristocrats, but we do have like old money people,
right?
Who at least at this point in history, like still had some sense of remove from their nouveau riche peers.
Yeah, that's an interesting quality too, because like I can't think of a lot of people like that who are like there, but like distancing themselves in some way.
Yeah,
we're trying to see it more clearly. Yeah.
No, it's like America, we can't produce a Stefan Zweig,
right? Yeah.
For better or worse,
right?
But we can produce a Joan Didion, and that's also pretty good.
Well, yeah, and like to go back to the Ian Watts thing, it's like you could put the what was it, the guy who wrote Tom Jones is the aristocrat who did the comedy novels where he looks at society.
I'm losing the name.
I think it's Fielding. I think it's Henry Fielding.
I think it's Fielding.
And then like the midpoint of the like Clarissa, like Pamela Samuel Richardson stuff, where it's like I'm there, this is happening to me. Like, like, and having those two, like I think you get less of the like structure view in Play It As It Lays, like it's more about her experience, but like in Didion stuff, it's like, you can see like I'm looking down on these Reagan people in their house, like I can see everything, like
God, oh wow, I'm having a thought now, because the Watts, that is a book that makes such a big thing out of like, again, this idea of like, I don't think Watts uses this term, and I don't know that it's exactly the right way to phrase his argument. But the novel is like the empathy machine, this thing that like gives you an insight into like other people, and maybe at least in some instances can kind of like create this fellow feeling. And I'm thinking about this in terms of like Didion, and again, like this affect, and I'm starting to feel like, because again, I've been very skeptical of like the empathy machine discourse, because again, I think that it's a little too,
it's like moralist.
It's moralist, exactly. It's this thing where it's like, oh, people started reading books about other people, so they started caring about other people,
right? Yeah.
Which I mean, again, maybe is true in like certain historical periods, but again, it smacks a little too much of like, well, if you read good books, you'll become a good person,
right? Exactly.
I think that there's almost this way in which, again, it's novels are mimetic machines. There are things where it's like you read this and you see yourself in it. You're not actually seeing the other person. You're seeing yourself as a different person.
Well, and I think the fact that you had said earlier, like you have to imaginally contribute to what's going on also helps with that. So,
yeah. And I mean, again, I think films are also this to some degree.
Yeah.
If anything, maybe even to a greater degree because of the image factor.
Yeah, exactly. You can just do that. Yeah.
But gonna have to think about that more.
That's
empathy versus mimesis.
Well, I think that's a good thought too, to also just tie back to Didion and new journalism, like the idea that the point was to say I'm the person reporting the story and not be like, where am I? Like it's
not
just
to be completely removed,
right? Yeah, and like.
Unfortunately, we have realized that was the wrong thing to do, and it was actually incredibly immoral and ruined journalism.
Yeah, it turns out like doing a bunch of drugs will not help you report on the story better. Like, Pache, Thompson. I don't know, but I think that's a good point to with the mimesis and the empathy, and I think like Played as It Lays is a good example to think about that, I feel like, in terms of the aesthetic of Didion versus like actually reading it, or like the emotions that go with actually reading it.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. You know, again, I think this quality is something that I find really interesting in art, and I'm not trying to moralize it.
Right.
I'm not saying like, oh, you should read Play It As It Lays and not want to drive down the highway in California in a big car.
And eat a single hard-boiled egg for food.
Yeah, I do think it's fascinating that like the human reaction to like reading something like this is like, oh, next time I'm sad, I want to go do that.
Right, yeah.
Rather than just being like, oh, I hope I don't have to go through that.
Yeah, I hope this doesn't happen to me. Yeah. Although, you know, John, the next time I'm in my car, you know, and instead of an egg, I got a big gulp soda, I'll be thinking of Joan Didion as I drive.
All right. Well, Ben, anything else you want to say about Play It As It Lays before we wrap up for the day?
I don't think so. I think I'll definitely try to be reading more Didion in the future, though. So
cool. Well, listeners, thank you as always for joining us as we head into the new year. Here, Ben and I have some big plans. We are announcing the theme of our next season, which is going to be the Infinite Library Goes Woke. That's right, woke is back.
no white men,
Straight white men.
no straight white men. Yeah.
Yes.
So.
We know that this last season was very man heavy.
Yeah, with the Tolkien and the Pynchon. So.
Yeah, no, this book is the only one I think we've read this season that was not by a straight white man. I'm assuming John Pastelli is straight. If I'm wrong, please correct me, Mr. Pastelli.
Yeah, and so it'll be nice to bring woke back. So it should be a fun season in the future.
Yeah, we have some really fun stuff planned. We're actually going to be starting off the season with kind of a paired reading or a paired duo of episodes. The first of which is going to be on Ursula K. Le Guin's The Dispossessed. We're going to be following that up right afterwards, shot and chaser style, with Samuel Delaney's response to The Dispossessed, Trouble on Triton.
Which I'm particularly excited to read because I've read The Dispossessed before, but I'm happy to reread it again. But I want to see what Delaney thinks about it. So
I'm sure it's going to be horny, if nothing else.
Right.
Well, listeners, as always, thank you for joining us for another year here in the Infinite Library. We hope that you will continue to join us for discussions of all things literary. As always, you know where you can find us. We'll have show notes here with all those essays we referenced and then couldn't remember the names of. But until then, I've been your host, John.
And I've been Ben.
See you next time. Semper Books.
Semper Books.
Thank you for listening to The Infinite Library. If you liked our show, we hope you'll subscribe and leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the podcast app of your choice. It helps us a lot. If you want to follow us on social media, we can be found on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Infinite Library Pod. If you'd like to contact our team directly with episode ideas or feedback, you can email us at infinitelibrarypod@gmail.com. Our intro music is by Amos Legend in the Forest of Mayhem. Our outro music is by DJ Daggy Diggs, and our logo was created by Lars Noir.